I'm going to share with you the top 3 superfoods that will let you ride harder for longer at your next Enduro race. Without force feeding yourself, without spending hours preparing meals, without having to eat weird stuff, so you can actually enjoy your race day and get the most out of it. And more importantly, we're going to use foods that you can actually get from the supermarket or the petrol station on the way to the track. So we're going to have a look at some footage here from Hattah Desert Race here in Australia. JA Edits has put together some great footage of both the junior and the senior day. So we're going to have a look at the senior day here. The first superfood is carbohydrate gels. So we're going to have a look at the start here for Hattah. And obviously it's a unique start compared to some other events. I think it's pretty cool having all bikes out there, how they are and how they take off. So the reason that carb gels are important is because carbohydrates are your main fuel source for riding and racing. When we're operating at high intensity, that's what our body is using as its main source of fuel and its preferred source of fuel. So we need to make sure that we're getting in between 30 to 50 grams of carbs for every hour of racing that we're doing. So if you have a look here for these guys, obviously they're all taking off. Going into that first hour, it's a great opportunity at the start here or just before the start is to be able to get a carb gel in, to be able to top up your carbohydrate stores before you take off for that first hour. And that's going to make sure that your carbs are topped up, your fuel tank is at 100%, and you're ready to rock and roll for the race. The better you can get at getting your carbohydrates in and making sure that they're topped up all the way through the race, the better you're going to feel. So as you're going through the race, and as you see these guys getting going, they're actively burning through carbs. Okay, so their carbs start off up here at 100%, and then they burn through. So for every hour, we want to top those up. And that's why carbohydrate gels are great, is because when you have your pit stops, you might do, say, a couple of laps at Hattah and then have a pit stop. That allows you a quick option to be able to get your carbs in while your bike's getting fueled up. You can quickly have a carb gel, get your carbs in and make sure that you're ready for the next hour or next couple of laps of riding, depending on the strategy that you're using. So for desert races or races like this where you are pitting and you are stopping and you have all your stuff in one spot, it's not like a destination race, you're doing laps, gels can be great. I'll show you which type of gels we can use. So if we hop over to here, I wanted to use stuff again from the supermarket, so it's really easy for you guys to have a look. So I'm using Woolworths, which is what we've got here in Australia, but it's just our main supermarket. Depending on where you're watching this from, you'll have your main popular supermarket as well. So these are Winners carb gels, which you can get from Woolworths. So if we have a look at these and we go down and we have a look at the nutrition information, we can see here quantity per serving of carbohydrates is 30 grams of carbs. So if we're chasing that 30 to 50 gram range every hour, we need to have 1 to 2 of these Winners carb gels for every hour of riding. So you could have 1 or 2 before you start your race while you're on the line, and then every time you stop, if you're stopping roughly every hour, then get a couple of gels in to make sure that your carbohydrates are always topped up and you've got that fuel tank there that you need to be able to perform at your best. When you can do that and you can get your carbohydrates nailed and dialed in, what will happen is you'll stop that hitting the wall feeling that a lot of riders get throughout a race, especially these big races. What happens for a lot of riders is they have carbs in their system from whatever they've eaten over the last 24 hours before the race, but they haven't done anything to top them up. So they start off really good for the first hour or so, and then once they chew through all those carbs, they're just in survival mode. Their body's just hanging on. Even if they've done all the fitness and strength work, it doesn't matter because their body doesn't have the fuel that it needs to keep going and pushing like these guys are. So if you look at the bike here, like if you look for this rider, body weight might be 75 kilos, 70 kilos for this particular rider. And then we've got a bike that might be a 450 or a 500, probably weighs 110 kilos, like with the oversized fuel tank and steg pegs and whatever other bits and pieces are on there. So for this particular rider, it might be like 180 kilos, 190 kilos that he's having to wrestle around for 4 hours out at Hattah. So he's burning through a lot of carbs, burning through a lot of energy, wrestling that around, especially on such a fast, sandy, and rough track. A very tough event, which is quite smooth here, but definitely gets whooped down. The second superfood is protein, more specifically a protein powder or a protein shake. The reason that protein is important is because if we have a look at these guys here again, they've got a bike which might weigh 110 kilos, and then they've got their body weight on top of that. So if you're weighing 80 kilos and your bike's 110, That's 190 kilos that you need to be able to wrestle around for these guys for 4 hours through the sand, through big rocks, through quite fast riding. And so what happens is when your muscles are moving around that amount of weight for that period of time, they're put under a lot of stress and they start to break down and fatigue. And what protein does is helps those muscles to start the rebuilding process and to not break down as much. So this will mean that you have less fatigue in your muscles as you go through the race, and also allow you to be able to recover, be able to recover faster through the race as you're going through each section, rather than having your muscles continually breaking down. By giving them the building blocks and the nutrients they need to be able to start the repairing process. The reason that protein powder or a protein drink is important is because we want the protein in liquid form, because your body's not going to be able to digest whole food while you're doing a race like this. When you've been riding as hard as these guys have, and then you come in for your pit stop, your body is in full stress mode. Okay, it's been working really hard, which means that your digestive system's switched off. So if you're trying to put in like a steak or trying to have whole foods while you're out there, especially protein, you're not going to be able to digest the food, so you're going to feel worse on the bike. But more importantly, your body's not going to get the nutrients and protein it needs anyway to be able to operate at its best, which is our goal. So when we have it in liquid form, like through a protein powder, our body has to do very little digestion to be able to get the nutrients and get the protein, because it's already broken down and it's in liquid and powder form. So when you can do that, going to make riding a lot better for you, because you can start the recovery process a lot earlier. You're giving your body the building blocks it needs to be able to recover and repair what's been broken down. Whereas what happens for a lot of riders is things just break down, and they just wear themselves out until they're at zero. And that's when you start to see your performance and how you feel physically dropping off like this. Like you'll start to see guys out here at Hattah that can keep pushing, and they can keep up their speeds and their lap times don't drop off very much. And then you see other guys that have great lap times at the start, which means their skills are quite good on the bike, but then they just drop off like that. Their lap times are just getting like minutes and minutes and minutes, so much slower every time they get out there, more than what the other guys are. So obviously the lap times are going to drop off regardless, but you want them dropping off like this rather than dropping off like that. So again, if we go back to Woolies and we have a look what they've got, like I had a look here, they have this one which is like a BSC high protein powder, which you can get again from the supermarket. So if we have a look at the stats for it, protein, I had a look here, here we go. If we have a look here and we zoom in a little bit, we can see here, protein, 27 grams of protein. With protein, we don't want a whole heap of protein going in while we're riding, so we can stick with about, say, 10 grams, 15 grams of protein for every hour of riding that we do, to make sure that we've got a little bit in there to be able to help us recover through the ride. It's also really good to be able to help if you're doing multi-day rides, because when you're doing multi-day rides or races, events where you're racing multiple days in a row, your recovery from day one is really important, because that's going to affect how you feel on day 2, day 3, and day 4, and really dictate how the rest of the event goes for you. So let's say for this one, you could have like half, I think it says here 2 scoops, to add 40 grams, 2 heap scoops. So you just have 1 scoop of this, or even a little bit less, for every hour when you have your carb gels at your pit stop. So again, another easy option that you can grab from the supermarket. The third superfood is sports drinks. The reason that sports drinks are important is because they're going to help you, they can help you to replace carbohydrates, because they have a lot of sugar in them, so you can use them instead of or as well as a carb gel. They also have electrolytes in there. So when you sweat, what happens is your body excretes electrolytes and salts and sodium. That's why, like, if you've ever been riding for a long time and you got really sweaty, and then you stop sweating after, like, you cooled off, you'll find your skin might feel like it's got sand on it. It feels very rough. That's because your body is excreting electrolytes and salt. They help our body to be able to retain water and get our muscles and body working efficiently on the bike, okay, how we want them to. The problem comes when those electrolytes get excreted out from our body from sweating and working hard. If they're not replaced, that's when you open yourself up for dehydration, for especially cramping, okay, more so towards the end of the race. You see a lot of guys that just drink water, and then they still have problems with dehydration and cramping. That's because they don't have enough carbohydrates in their body to retain water, and they don't have electrolytes there in their body to be able to help them retain water, keep them hydrated, and stop them from cramping up. So the reason sports drinks are great, so you can have a look. Let's have a look for this rider. Doesn't have a camelback. Let's see if we can find someone who's got a hydration pack on. There was a few guys at the start. Let's have a look for this particular rider here. There we go. Cool. So he's got a camelback on. So the reason I chose Hadar Desert Race to look at is because we use two options with our riders. Like you can use the carb gel strategy where you're getting your carbs in at your fuel stops, or you can also use the camelback strategy. The camelback strategy is where instead of relying on carb gels at your pit stops, you can actually put your carbs in your camelback. And that's where your sports drink comes in, or your carbohydrate drink, your electrolyte drink. So instead of just putting water in your camelback, what you do is you put all of your carb requirements into your camelback through the sports drinks or through the carb drink. This works well if you are able to use your camelback while you're riding. So for this type of riding Hadar, there's probably sections out there on the track, like a corner, where you can put the straw in your mouth or slow up a tiny bit, and it's not going to affect your riding too much. And that way you can get your carbohydrates in. It's no good having all your carbs in your backpack, having 2 or 3 litres of liquids in there and not drinking it because your body's not getting the nutrients it needs. You're better off using the carb gels. If you are doing faster events, so let's say Think Desert Race or very fast type riding, let's say maybe, so like faster type riding, desert type riding, where it's harder to get your camelback straw in, then that's when I'd recommend using the carb gels at your pit stops because it's easier to be able to get in, it's safer, and it's not going to affect your riding too much. Best thing that will happen, or the thing that you'll notice when you get your carbs in through your camelback is, again, it's just more consistent energy all the way through the race. So you see these guys are pushing. You want to be able to ride with that level of intensity and effort all the way through the race. You'll start to see some other guys, so that maybe that particular rider there who's like up on the pegs, like really resting, you can see that he's having a bit of a challenge, he's struggling a little bit. That's what carbohydrates are going to help you to do. It's help you to be more consistent and push like these guys all the way through. You want to have your body in a state where it's got energy and fuel to go. Exactly like your bike. If you put fuel in your bike, it's good to go. If you don't put any fuel in your bike, it doesn't go very well. And likewise, you can put race fuel in your bike, or you can put like 91 in your bike, right? We want to make sure your body is fueled as well as the bike, and we want to make sure we're putting race fuel in your body, not just putting the good stuff out of the bike. So if we go back and we have a look for sports drinks, you can grab these. Again, go back to Woolies and have a look. These are Gatorades. So if we have a look at the Gatorade sports drinks, you can use Powerade, or there's like Maximus. There's a whole heap of different sports drinks brands. But really what we're looking for on the back of the pack is here, carbohydrates, 36 grams. Okay. So again, we want to be in that 30 to 50 gram range for every hour of riding. So Hadar's a 4-hour desert race. So you'd have to be getting anywhere between you'd be getting like 1.5 bottles in per hour. So anything from 4 to 6 bottles of Powerade or Gatorade, sports drinks, you'd be getting that in throughout the race. And that's going to make sure that you've got your carbs topped up. But again, you have to use a strategy that's you can actually follow. Okay, so if you know that you're not going to be able to get your camelback straw in your mouth, or you're going to forget, then you're probably better off just focusing on carb gels. Otherwise, you can do a mix of both. If you want to do a bit of camelback stuff and a bit of carb gels at your stops, that's great. The main thing is making sure you're in that 30 to 50 gram range of carbs. So they're the top 3 superfoods that we use with our riders to be able to help them kick ass on race day. As always, if you'd like some help actually implementing this stuff into your training program, into your preparation for racing, you can apply for the Fast Laps program below. I'll put the link in the description for you or in the comments. Otherwise, hopefully you enjoyed this video.